Microsoft Ignite, Channel 9 Live. I'm Matt McSpirit, technical evangelist for all things data center. Welcome back. Don't forget you can interact with us through a multitude of options. Firstly, hashtag MSIgniteCH9. Use that for your questions. Let us know what you want to hear from Jeff, who we've got today joining us. Jeff, tell us a little bit about you, your role, and because it is May the 4th, your favorite Star Wars movie.
Oh, easily. OK, so I'm Jeff Woolsey. I'm a principal program manager in the Cloud and Enterprise division. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've been working on a variety of technologies over 12 years here at Microsoft. I really look at our overall software-defined data center, looking at software-defined compute, storage, and networking. And favorite Star Wars movie, by far, no, it's not even close, Empire Strikes Back.
So not one of the first three?
Not even close.
No.
You don't even really need to talk about that.
Return of the Jedi man myself.
Looking forward to The Force Awakens.
Yes, indeed. Now, those of you who watched the keynote this morning, you would have seen Jeff do a stellar job on introducing some incredibly powerful and new technology that I think is blown people away. The Twitter feed's lit up, a lot of people interested. Now, the challenge with keynotes, having been there with you myself, fitting so much in such a short space of time. Talk us through almost the highlights reel of what you delivered and what it means to the IT pro out there.
Yeah, I have to say, we had the challenge. We have truly an embarrassment of riches here. When it came to Brad's section for Cloud and Enterprise, we literally had hours and hours and hours of things that we could have done for the keynote this morning. It was really tough trying to figure out what we could do in terms of timing and deliver the overall message. So I'm hoping that folks, even if you're not here and you're not taking in the sessions, please do look at them online because there's literally so much. But the first thing we knew we had to really, we were excited to introduce was the new Microsoft Azure Stack. And the Azure Stack really goes to, this is quite honestly something our customers have told us just loudly and clearly. We introduced the Windows Azure Pack a little over a year ago. And the Azure Pack has been one of the hottest downloads at Microsoft, allowing people to create kind of an IaaS experience that's very similar, very in Azure consistent in some very specific ways. But what we heard from customers was, we really, really like this, but it's similar and it's consistent. We want the same. We want Azure. We want that. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we drill into this further, and really there was a number of things that were driving this. And one of the things that really came down to it was literally writing cloud applications. Developers told us, look, I want to be able to write a single cloud application that I know that with confidence I can deploy either in my own private cloud running in my data center, run by my operations, or in Azure. And that I can run it in both places, and it's literally the same code. Don't tell me that it's kind of this way for Azure and it's kind of this way. It's literally the same. And so the first part of the Azure Stack demonstration was, first of all, introducing people to the new cloud application model based on the Azure resource model, and showing how the cloud's, the expenses application that we wrote is basically been deployed in Azure, and then talking about the components that make up a cloud application. And to be very clear, it's not just a web app or a VM. That's 5-6 years old. We're way beyond that. A cloud app today, you want it to be scalable. You want it to be elastic. You want it to be late binding. There's a lot of attributes that you want to apply to that cloud application. And so that expenses application really showed that off in a very good way. It shows off, number one, IaaS virtual machines. It shows the virtual networks, IP addresses, private networks between the components of the application. Flexible storage, whether it's file-based storage, blob-based storage, object tables, queues, it's all there. A web app component, and all of these things being delivered in the new cloud application model. And one key part of that, of course, is the management of it. From an IT perspective, we want to make sure that we give our IT folks the power to be able to manage this in an easy and consistent way, and also to be able to manage it holistically very easily. So if you look at the new cloud app, for example, and it consists of all these resources, I don't want to have to go manage all these individually. Because if that's the case, then how have we made this easier? If I want to be able to define, Matt, you're a contributor to this application, then guess what? It's going to configure the ACLs for file shares, for switch ports, for the application, for the IaaS virtual machines, and we do that very quickly and easily, and it's managing all of the resources. So the new Azure resource model is very powerful. As I said in the keynote, it's actually a sophisticated templating engine for multi-resource lifecycle management. That's really what it's doing, and it's an incredibly powerful part of this whole Azure and Azure Stack deployment. So basically, first of all, showed this new cloud application running in Azure, and then we went off to PowerShell to show how we would deploy this application in Azure and in Azure Stack. And one of the key things I really enjoyed the most is, number one, it's 4 lines. It's not some crazy multi-page script. It's literally 4 lines. And there's one variable that's different. It's location. Is the location that I'm deploying this a Microsoft data center running Azure, or is it a data center, your customer's data center, running Microsoft Azure Stack? And so we actually deployed it to Microsoft Azure Stack running in a Chicago data center, not in Azure. And then we brought up Azure Stack so people could see it's literally the same application. And in fact, we even went into side-by-side view so people could see it's literally the same resources, the same IaaS VMs, the same SQL paths. It's not just IaaS, it's IaaS and paths working together. It's all of the constructs that bring all this together being managed holistically.
Okay.
And so that cloud application model is a huge part of the Azure Stack message.
Now, I want to go back to something that you mentioned very briefly then, and it was on the screen in the keynote, but it didn't get called out, and that was around not traditional storage, but the use of blob storage on premises. So tell us a bit more about what that means for the Azure Stack and also IT pros and our developers as well.
Well, if you look at Azure today, we offer a wide variety of different storage solutions. Sure, you can have file-based storage, but you can have tables, you can have queues, you can have object-based storage, and people love the fact that Azure has all of these flexible options. Well, we don't have those today in our on-premises solutions today with Windows Server. And so, of course, if we're going to bring Azure to on-premise and Azure Stack, guess what? We're doing that same thing. We're bringing tables, queues, blobs, and again, I didn't have the time to show it, but I could have very easily drilled into the storage for that same application and showed you the same blob storage running on premises in your data center. So yes, object-based storage is a key part of that, tables and queues, and that's all coming in Azure Stack.
So are enterprises going to be the big winners for using Azure Stack, or are service providers going to be beneficial? Is it for the developers? Who is the real audience for the Azure Stack?
Well, I think definitely both enterprises and service providers, I think, are going to see some huge benefits. Because number one, at the end of the day, if I take a step back, people ask, what's our cloud strategy? And once they understand what we're doing, and we've been very clear and transparent about this for years now, our cloud OS strategy is very simple. We want to give you the best cloud whenever and wherever it makes business sense. That may be in a public cloud in Azure, it may be in a private cloud in your data center, it may be with a trusted service provider, or more importantly, it's most likely a combination or even all 3 of those. We're not going to force you to one or the other. If you talk to, for example, some of our competitors that do just public cloud, they're going to say, oh, private cloud's bad. If you're going to talk to some of our competitors that do just private cloud, they're going to say, oh, public cloud's bad. We're going to look at this from the standpoint of we're going to give you the flexibility to do what makes business sense for you. And so we're going to give you public, private, and service providers. So by providing that, now the choice is up to you, and you can make those investments as you see fit.
Cool. So a related question that we've had come in on the feed there is it select services like the Azure Pack of today, it offered IaaS, DB as a service, some PaaS properties as well, or is it everything you can expect to find in Azure?
So a lot of this is, I'm not going to get into to the specifics today. There's some TBD involved there, but what you're going to see is, you're going to see, like I said in the demo, it's Azure coming to your data center. It's the cloud application model. You saw IaaS, you saw PaaS, and I didn't get a chance to get into compute, storage, and much more, and that will be unfolding over time here as we bring Azure Stack. We'll be releasing a public preview of that later in the year. Okay, so not available today, but you will still be able to get hold of the Windows Server technical preview, the System Center one very soon as well. And I don't mean to be sloshy with the answers because some of this is still being determined. Yep, correct, yeah. And I don't want to give you an answer that's not true. We wanted to make sure that people at Ignite had a view of where we were going in the future. Absolutely. It's early, but we still want to make sure that people know, and that they have a view into what's happening going forward. Now, one thing that has had a lot of press over the last couple of weeks, since early April when we made the announcement, is Nano Server. Yes. Hugely popular. The blogosphere and Twittersphere blew up when we mentioned that and containers. Now, tell us a bit more about
Nano server? Is it just about size, or is there more to it?
Well, Nano servers actually, it's been part of a continuing journey, and if you've been paying attention, we've actually been quietly messaging this for many years. This goes all the way back to 2008. In 2008, we really began a componentizing and a refactoring of Windows Server. In Windows Server 2008, we introduced this whole concept of server core, where it basically, we removed a bunch of the GUI and you managed it remotely, but it still included things like features and roles and drivers and things like that. In 2012 R2, we did so much more. We improved the remote management, full-on PowerShell got included, and we did more refactoring and more componentization. And what we're doing now is we're taking Nano Server to the next step in this journey, which is we look at it as the optimal way to deploy your host infrastructure from a software-defined compute standpoint, as well as a software-defined storage standpoint, as well as the perfect runtime for new next-generation cloud applications. So what we mean now is, for example, you look at Windows Server today, or even Server Core, it's got features, it's got roles, it's drivers. None of that's in Nano. If you want a feature or a role, you've got to add that to it. That's something, instead of, we're going to provide a very specific purpose-built operating system for what it is you're trying to do. If you want to run, for example, Hyper-V on Metal with Nano Server, great. Enable Hyper-V, the bits will get sucked into the image, put the specific drivers in there for this specific hardware and deploy. If you want to run this in a container, then we want this is going to be optimal for containers. This is 64-bit only. There's no WoW layer, for example. And we want this to be a small, compact, highly efficient runtime for cloud-based applications going forward. So we see those as the two roles for Nano Server.
Okay, so you mentioned it could be a very powerful Hyper-V host.
Absolutely.
We've seen some demos that were published that showed a lot of virtual machines.
You'll see that in sessions here this week, yes.
Which is excellent from a density perspective, really gives you that return on investment. But from a Hyper-V perspective, obviously Nano and containers are getting a lot of the press, and now Azure Stack. But what's new in Hyper-V in the technical preview and now TP2? What's some of the new capabilities that you really enjoy?
There are a bunch of things that have gone into Hyper-V. One of it is, we've continued to have this very close relationship between Hyper-V and the scale-out file server. And one of the interesting challenges was, for many years we released server every 2 to 3 years, like clockwork. And there was a point where, we got to, after 2008 R2, people would say, you know what, it takes you too long to release your servers. We'd like a faster cadence. So we released 2012, and literally 1 year later, we released 2012 R2. A year later, and then the complaints were the opposite. Oh, that's too fast. Then we said, what are you talking about? You said you wanted it faster. So 2 to 3 years is too slow, but 1 year is too fast. And what we realized what was happening was this. Customers really love the fact that the features, were putting in a whole bunch of new features and capabilities and technologies, but their ability to consume it was difficult because literally we had people say, I just finished deploying my 2012, I'm loving it, and now R2 is here, how do I deal with that? So what we wanted to do is make it super easy to upgrade the cloud infrastructure and leave all of your workloads running on top without any downtime. So one of the great new features that we're introducing in Windows Server 2016 is zero downtime infrastructure upgrades. And this is true of Hyper-V workloads as well as the scale-out file server. So I could literally have a cluster that's running Windows Server 2012 R2, and I want to upgrade this in place without any new hardware to 2016. And so what we can do now is we can drain all of the nodes off of the single server, upgrade that to 2016, bring the 2016 server back into the 2012 R2 cluster, and it's running as a mixed mode cluster. And then we would literally walk through every server in the cluster, and as we walk through every server in the cluster, we upgrade all of the nodes. Finally, when all of the nodes are are running 2016, then we upgrade the functional level to 2016, and now you can take advantages of all the new features there. This is a completely automated process. So now we've given you the ability, for example, to take advantage of new features, take advantage of them faster without any downtime, and it's all automated.
Yeah, and it's important to call out as well that PowerShell command, and it is just one command to go from previous to Windows Server 2016 functional level, but that is the point of no return.
Yes.
In terms of if you want to test and leave it running for a little while.
Sure, you could be running at the 2012 R2 functional level, and after you've run it, move on. And the beautiful thing is, once you do that, again, now you can start taking advantage of the new features and capabilities and further enhancements there. So we want to make it friction-free, like zero friction to be able to take advantage of new enhancements and capabilities.
Nice. So that's from a Hyper-V standpoint, but obviously you said there's a lot of relationships with the scale-out file server. What's some of the new stuff coming in storage outside of the blob storage we talked about before? So what's some of the new stuff around storage, perhaps some new innovation in Spaces that's coming in Windows Server?
Yes, so there's definitely some new innovation that's coming in Spaces, the ability to automatically, there's automatic load balancing things that are happening behind the scenes to make it easier and to be more efficient about your storage. There's some massive improvements we've done in deduplication. Deduplication now has been highly parallelized so that deduplication can happen in a fraction of the time that it's happened in the past. And in fact, you're going to see 2016 really being the dawn of using REFS as well.
Right.
So REFS is a file system that we introduced back in 2012 and 2012 R2, but REFS, we were very specific about specific use cases. Now in 2016, REFS with the scale-out and file server and Hyper-V is the ideal combination because we can do some things now that are, because REFS is really our next generation file system. I'll give you a perfect example. One of the things that we get asked about is if I want to create a fixed size hard drive in Hyper-V, with NTFS we create that, and of course we zero it out for security. But that's an operation that happens at the NTFS level. In REFS, and by the way, it takes time to do that, and it could take quite a bit of time depending on the size of that drive. In REF, it's instantaneous.
Right.
So now you can create those fixed size drives that are zeroed and they are secure, and you're doing this in a fraction time. Merging, differencing drives, things like these are instantaneous actions now in REFS. And again, we're doing live demos of these throughout the show here at Ignite.
Excellent. Now, there was a few things called out in the keynote around security from different angles, both in Windows.
Actually, there's one thing we haven't talked about, which is networking. And this is something I got to mention because I forgot to mention this in terms of the Azure Stack keynote this morning. One of the things that I'm really excited about going in Azure Stack is, in Azure, we have these really comprehensive, flexible networking capabilities up there. We have network load balancers, we have software network controllers, we have software load balancers, we have distributed firewalls. If you go up into Azure and actually take a look at all of the networking things up there, we have just a huge laundry list of capabilities you can do. And more importantly, these capabilities have been tested at global scale. So for example, if you watched the Sochi Olympics last year, we delivered the Sochi Olympics to over 100 million users worldwide on over 4 continents. We streamed it everywhere. If you watched it on your phone, on your PC, on your iOS, on your Android, whatever, that was coming from Microsoft, and that was coming from Azure, and that was going through our network controller, distributed firewall, software load balancer. Well, we are taking those, packaging those up, and giving those to you in the Azure Stack. So for the very first time now, we are giving you some unbelievably powerful networking tools as part that we've been using and are already battle hardened and tested that have literally been running in Azure for years. We're giving to you so that you can run them on premises with Azure Stack. And so that's something I'm very excited about.
It is, and it's something that's important to call out as well because Microsoft is in an extremely unique position to be able to do what you just said, is battle test this software-defined networking in this case, but also storage and virtualization at immense scale, more so than anybody else, and have the on-premises technologies to bring it back into so that the customers benefit.
Well, and this is something our CEO, Satya Nadella, has talked about on a number of occasions. He calls this the virtuous engineering cycle. And what this means is, we will deliver innovation in a Windows Server that gets used by Azure. Azure will deliver innovation, they'll make changes, they'll do tweaks, they'll optimize, they'll do things, and those will go into Windows Server. And what happens is, even if you're not using Azure today, and that number is shrinking every day, even if you're not, you're still getting the benefits because we're taking that code and we're putting it into Windows Server that you can get it to run it on premises. So very powerful.
Nice, and we did have a related question to Azure Stack come in just a few minutes ago. What is the smallest footprint needed to get what I presume is Azure running on your servers, so Azure Stack running on your servers? And I'm guessing it's probably not a number we've determined just yet.
So I don't know the number off the top of my head, but let me put it to you this way. I already saw someone tweeted this. They were looking at the fact that we made the Windows Server 2016 technical preview available today. And if you download the technical preview, you'll see on the ISO there's a WIM file for Nano Server. The nano server WIM file is 146 megabytes. Megabytes. Okay? You can put that on your physical system as your Azure Stack host.
It's only 10 floppy disks.
It's only 10.
I know.
No, it's 146 megabytes. That's 140, give or take, floppy disks.
Right.
But still, easily fits on your USB flash drive without.
Absolutely.
So I don't know the entire. Footprint, and honestly, it's still a little bit early right now. As we move along, I'm sure we'll have that data for you. Sorry, I don't have it today.
No, that's perfect. Okay, so when we think about security, as I said before,
Yes.
there was a lot in the keynote from Brad around security of the infrastructure, talking about the operations management suite and the analytics that provides. So tell us a bit more about that, because it was a brief demonstration.
Yes.
There was a lot of rich dashboard insight, but take us through it in a bit more depth.
So the operations management suite, honestly, let's take a step back real quick to explain one of the biggest challenges that we've heard from customers is, look, my data center now spans all sorts of different things. Maybe I have actually one physical building that I call my data center, but I've got cloud resources, maybe in Azure, maybe in Amazon's, maybe somewhere else, or maybe I've got multiple of my own data centers that I have to coordinate with my cloud resources. How do I bring all of this together so that I can see all of my resources, all of my applications, all of my services, everything in one location? How do I bring all of that data together so that I can then somehow try and figure out to bring some analytics to bear so I can figure out, is my business running efficiently? Are my SQL servers running well? Or is my Active Directory? Are my web apps? Are my cloud apps? Is everything running as efficiently as it could be? Well, it turns out the way that works today is people will cobble together a bunch of different solutions. They'll try and script something coming from here, script something coming from here, bring all this together. And if they're actually lucky enough to actually bring some of this data together, then you have to figure out, okay, so now I've got this data, but I've got to wade through this and trudge through this to kind of figure out what are the meaningful statistics that I can use to help me run my business better. We've looked at this and we said, you know what, this is a really hard problem, and guess what? We know this because in running Azure and millions of servers, we know that you have to be able to manage this holistically, and you need to be able to have a rich insight, and Hadoop backed by this to give you that insight. So with Operations Management Suite number 1, we allow you to aggregate, collate, collect all that data, make it easy for you to do it, whether it's individual servers, whether it's linking through System Center or through your Azure account, bringing all of these together and collating and aggregating that data. We then apply Hadoop-based data analytics to it, and then we surface up that rich information in an easy to consume way. And we certainly provide a nice overview dashboard. There's things like Active Directory assessment, malware assessment, security. Security is something we realized early on, we want to make security management really easy, really ubiquitous. One of the things we can do is there's a tile that immediately you click into it and it'll show me, hey, here are what looked like suspicious activity with servers. I have someone that's trying to repeatedly log into a server, and maybe they forgot their password, or maybe it's the bad guys trying to brute force their way into a server, and I can take a look, and instead of me taking that data and then RDPing into a system, I actually click into it and the data is right there for me. Then I can also look at it from a patch management standpoint and give me, here are the servers that are missing critical patches, and bring all this insight to me in a very easy to use way. And so from an overview standpoint, backup, security, site recovery, and disaster recovery is another thing. This was something I would have loved to demonstrate this morning. We just simply didn't have time to do it. But one of the other parts of the Operations Management Suite is site recovery. And we have made huge advancements in site recovery in literally just the last few years. Initially, it started out that site recovery was just for Hyper-V Replica. That was the inaugural service. But over time, we've added so many more new features. Now, we're doing recovery for not only Hyper-V VMs and orchestration of that, but VMware, physical, and even SAN replication. So now all of a sudden, you really, truly, honestly, goodness, have one pane of glass that you can go to. And because this is all rendered in beautiful HTML5, this can be on my Surface, this can be on my phone, this can be on my PC or whatever, and I can literally manage my site recovery from a single pane of glass. So Operations Management Suite, these are just a few of the things that it's done, but at the core, it's about bringing all of this data together, correlating it, aggregating it, surfacing it up to you, and then of course, if you don't like the built-in queries that we have, the built-in information, you can create your own, you can save your own queries, you can have your own custom dashboard, and you can even save those dashboards and share it with your friends, your coworkers, in your organization or whatever.
Yeah, and that's one of the key things is that customization capability of what is now the Operations Management Suite, specifically the insights and the analytics component. And,
absolutely.
And that component has been through an evolution of its own. I mean,
yes.
It was only 12 months ago at TechEd that we were on stage showing operational insights for a very early look, and that's been in preview for a while, and that has evolved into this analytics element of the wider operational insights.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because it shows at Microsoft, we are innovating at a crazy fast pace right now. I saw many people tweet this, blog this. This is not your father's Microsoft. Yeah, truer words couldn't be spoken. We are innovating at a crazy fast pace, and we are really excited to be bringing all of these technologies, whether it's in public, private, or service providers, to our customers.
Now, the other area of security outside of the logs and analytics is essentially protecting the VMs and the fabric themselves.
Yes.
What's some of the innovation that's coming in the next release of the platform that delivers on that wasn't in TP1, the Technical Preview 1, so people can now experience? Tell us a bit about that.
So we are introducing something to solve really one of the biggest challenges that computer science has faced over the last many decades. It's a question I see relatively every, once or twice a month, which is, hey Jeff, what happens if, I've got a VM running and a hoster, or even in my own enterprise? How do I protect against the rogue admin? I trust the guys today, but what happens if a guy get a bad performance review and he's upset? How do I know he doesn't just walk out the door with my VMs? Can't I just BitLocker these? Doesn't that protect me? And the answer is, no, it doesn't protect you. And this is on any platform, whether it's Windows, whether it's Linux, whether it's VMware, whether it's Hyper-V, doesn't matter. If you are the admin, by definition, I can do anything on the box. And you're thinking, well, I BitLockered it. Yes, but those keys reside in memory. And the host admin has access to memory. They can plug in a debugger, they can decrypt these, it's not a problem. What we're doing in this next release is about solving that problem. It's about creating this new Guardian service. It's about creating what we're calling virtual secure mode, which actually allows us to provide a separate context outside of the host administrator, where for the first time ever, you can safely put BitLocker keys, you can safely put encryption keys. So even if the host goes rogue, takes your VMs, he still, even as host, can't access it. He can't get into memory. He actually can't get the keys out of memory because they don't reside in his context. And this is something we're going to be drilling into very deeply this week here at Ignite. This is some exciting new technology, virtual secure mode coming in the next release.
Awesome. So where can people find you for the rest of the week as we wrap up?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to be in a variety of places. I've got a couple of sessions. I've got a session tomorrow. We're going to be talking about software-defined compute in the host. I'll be at the booth. I'll be working some booth duty. I always love talking with customers. Please come by the booth. I also have a session at the end of the week about helping people understand why they need to modernize their servers and things like that.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Jeff. And that wraps us up. Join us again on Channel 9 Live. Thank you very much for your time. And stay with us for the next hot session. Thank you.